Greetings, my name is Michael Cook. I'm an application developer, design artist, and a system engineer. And in this video I'm going to cover a demonstration of a function that I've been writing over the last few weeks. I'm going to switch over to the scene. Okay, first and foremost I'm going to say Elon Musk receives high praise from Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. Warren Buffett's a cool bastard, and I got a whole bunch of stuff here that people could read if they want to pause the video and read it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this, right, and I'm going to switch back and forth here. What I have up right now is basically Task Manager. It's got all my stuff there and whatnot, and what I'm going to do is get back to this point right here. I came up with this error because I was recording a video earlier today. Been sort of going over this video, well, the content of this video for a while, as well as functions and stuff. Now what I'm going to do here is, let's see, I'm going to go into this, wrong one, I'm going to go into this, right, and then I'm going to load New-VmController, right, so that's going to load. Alright, and then what this is basically it's going to load a GUI, or at least the code behind stuff, and then this is going to load the GUI. This can load the GUI with a certain switch, but I didn't enable that. So, this is what I want to cover here. This is the graphical user interface that I've covered in a couple of other iterations of this video, but, it is far-reaching, and so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show off what this does and explain it as I'm using it here, right? So, in this combo box here, this is the same old PowerShell driven GUI here with a bunch of code behind that is talked about in this document, right, which is located at this link, which I'll cover in a bit, right? This document right here, there's the link, and what I'm going to do is use it, and I'm going to explain what it does. So the red circle with the X there, it's going to change as I type in a legitimate path, C drive backslash, that's a legitimate path, right? But here, let's do this. I can type it, or I can use this file explorer object. And then I'm going to go to where do I go? So what I'm indicating here is where I want the templates to go, the templates that this GUI is going to make, right? And then I'm going to submit the name of the domain, and then the NetBIOS ID, or at least I'm going to hit create. Now this isn't the most complicated program on the face of the planet. But what it does do is it looks through the adapter and then it withdraws information, if I were to use get net IP configuration / detailed. That right there is going to give me all the classes that show up right here. This particular class is sort of rebadging what that function returns, and I talk about that in this document. So I'm going to do is say class node, what was it, class VM config, and it's not the right one. There it is. Alright, so that's the class that shows up in the GUI, right? And I'm going to do is go back into this, right? And then this class is also featured there. I'll go over this stuff as the virtual machine is installing itself, right? The idea is that I select an adapter and it gets all the information from the adapter in order to create all this information that it's going to insert into the templates. So then I go range, it's going to have that range there, it's going to condense it all into a notation, and then if I want to expand that notation into being able to scour that network for any potential hosts, then that's what that portion of the utility does. It does need some additional tuning for much larger networks, but this should conceivably work okay for, I don't know, I need to scour the additional far-reaching network types in order to like tell you, like, yeah, you don't want to use 10.10. whatever, or a class A subnet port, because that's going to be a lot of hosts, and this actually goes through and it will get the host name for any of those systems if it's got a DNS entry or whatever. And then like this process is allowing the template to know what IP addresses that it can't use because it's already being used or whatever. Though there are some limitations that I won't be able to implement. Like, you know, every network is different. But anyway, here is the information that's going to be submitted to like child nodes and DHCP servers. It's going to have an exclusion for anything that it found in that range, and then it's going to add it to the DHCP server. The idea here is that I can spawn a server that can be like a DNS server, DHCP server, etc. and so forth. And what it does is it's creating a template that could be used by Hyper-V. Right, so all of those things show up when I've populated all those fields, and like an adapter showed up, and then I hit create. Right, and then this tab here, I'm going to say setup. Right, if I click on that, it's going to populate these fields and then show you like green check mark. That's good, dude. That's good. You know. And if I click this, it's going to clear it, and then I can select the type of account that I want to add. So if I want to add a system account or a service account, I can certainly do that. Let's say I want to add a user account. So MCC85S, right? Green circle with the black check mark. And then let's say that I just want to use a randomly generated password. Well, there it is. And then as soon as all the fields that are available are there, then I can click create, and then it adds it to the thing, right? And then I can select it, and then it'll populate the things again. I need to add like a save feature, so if you were to change it, then I can save it, but I haven't done that yet. I will at some point. And then let's say for Windows, to install Windows 11, I'm going to need a Microsoft account, so stp1365@gmail.com. This is a throwaway account. I don't really use it. I set it up specifically to set up Windows 11 installation, and then add in a pin. And once you do that, and you can click create. You could also, you don't have to use just numbers, which I did just use numbers. You can also use letters and symbols, and then if you do that, then the installation script is going to be able to capture that, and then I'll explain as I go. I'm going to hit create, and now I have these three credential objects, right? And now, in order to image the machine, I could use the network, but I'm not focusing on that in this utility. This utility is, well, I will focus on that again at some point, but right now I want to use an image to be able to install a virtual machine with an operating system, whether it's a Windows image or it's a Linux image. You need to have ways to be able to differentiate the two. Anyway, you can type the path in there. If the path doesn't exist, then it's going to say, nope, not allowed, dude. But then as soon as the path does exist, then it's going to be like, okay, cool, we're good. And then you can go ahead and import. So all these things are controlled from the XAML interface in that function right there. All this stuff that you're seeing, it's all pre-calculated in that. So you can also use this strictly from the PowerShell console, and then use like everything that's in the code behind. You don't have to use the XAML at all. It's basically if you want to be able to use a graphical user interface, you can. So if I click on an image, then it's going to show the content that I extracted from each of those images, right? I can explain how that works at some point. I did explain some of that in the previous version of this video. But I want to install Windows 11, right? And if there were other ISOs in that path, it would have populated them as well. And it doesn't need to be a Windows disk in order to use an image. And then let's say I want the installation to use that specific edition, which is an option that can be selected in the actual installation process, which you'll see in a moment. And then now I go over to the template, and let's say I want desktop 01, right? Oh, wait a minute, it worked right there, but as soon as I hit that, nope, it's not going to work, dude. You're not allowed to use that one. So what I can do is I can go over here and select this. It should be showing up as a host. Yeah, there it is. So sometimes the data grid just doesn't populate stuff. Maybe if the object exists before the data grid inserts the object or whatever. But if I click on it, then I can scroll through the properties and stuff, and this is all classes in the document. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click remove. Right, I want to get rid of it because I want to be able to control stuff from the GUI. So what it's doing is it's actually like shutting down that virtual machine that was there, and it's going to delete it, and then it's going to delete all the assets for it. Right? And I click exit, and at some point this is going to be done destroying that virtual machine, and then the UI thread will unlock. This will eventually be multi-threaded capable, but right now it isn't because of the way that I built this graphical user interface. The XAML in general uses, there's a couple of different modes for the window, and for whatever reason, being able to share like variables and properties between the UI thread and the backend XAML and stuff is a bit of a balancing act if you're trying to do it via the approach that I'm using here. So by removing it, it removed the virtual machine and then it updated the window. And if I hit update, and then it'll like check the switches and the hosts and stuff. I'm going to switch this over to switches to see what switches I have in the system too. Right? And then I can click update. Right? And then nothing changed. If I want to click a new switch or click on that one, I have to update it so that if you select it, it'll populate the field there and the type and everything, but that's sort of like not that big of a deal. Now what I want to do is I want to go back to this tab, and what I want to do is, well, it's still showing that, so that's got to be refreshed, but, re-enter the thing, and the event trigger, the event handler updates that, and we're good to go. I can go ahead and I can create a virtual machine with those properties, right, but I can't create it yet because the path isn't selected or whatever. So if I type that or whatever, it's not a legitimate path. So what I want to do is click, I can either type in the path, c drive/edi, right? Or I can hit the browse function and then like travel to the thing. Right? And if I exit out of it, it's going to be like, nope, you're not allowed to just put it nowhere. Right? So like it's operating with the fewest assumptions possible. And then you go ahead and click create. Right, and then it creates the template. For whatever reason, this field isn't populating. There's that one. I think it has something to do with the XAML and that one. But the information will still show up. Like if I export this, click export, and then it exported the file to that location. As you can see, file VM is where I wanted it to go, and the name of the template is there, right? And so I've exported it. All of that is complete. It's got the networking, it's got the credentials, it's got the image it needs, and then now what I can do is, I can totally close this GUI and then like use this other method here that just looks for that particular file and then it can instantiate the object. But I want to show this part here. So we go to this, and go to the location of the templates, which is in the path that I typed in the first thing. Right, I could easily get it so that when you fill that out, it'll like look here for the template files or whatever, but I'm not that far yet. Anyway, once I clicked on that, then this popped up. It's got a GUID, which causes it to have a unique ID, right? And it's going to change once I create the virtual machine, which it's not created yet. And in order to create the virtual machine, you can click this button and then it'll start creating it. But if you do that, it's going to have this error because I have intentionally made it so that the GUI isn't ready to do that yet. It's very easy to change, but the thing is that when the object is created, it has to like send things out to the console, and that is another component of this GUI that is yet to be implemented, is that all the things that are popping up in the console are going to eventually be showing up on here, and will need run spacing and multi-threading in order to do that, so that the UI thread doesn't lock up. And what I've done so far is pretty complicated by itself, but it is possible. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, alright, I'm going to close out of the GUI, right? And now what I'm going to do is I have enough memory to start a 4 gigabyte virtual machine. And if I go to VM here, it's going to have the old variable, I think. It is. It's going to have the old variable, and that's if I go into vm.console.output, and I'll be able to see all the stuff that was up and running until like I ended it or whatever. And you know, when I destroyed that particular virtual machine, it created this log file which shows the same information. So if I go to cs system.io.file, read all lines. I gotta get the square bracket out of that. But for whatever reason, like, I can't say for whatever reason, it's creating a new instance of the object, so it didn't write a heck of a lot of information to the console. It didn't, like, take the prior iteration of this variable here and then insert it. So that is something, basically it's creating a new instance of the object in order to make the file and whatever. There are ways around that, but I'm not going to talk about that in this particular video. What I'm going to do now is say, alright, I want to do this, and that's going to create the new VM, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through all of these commands here, and I'm going to hit F8, and it's going to automate all of that initial setup stuff, and it'll deserialize the accounts that the GUI made and implemented, and then it will instantiate the object. It creates a new object. It will check for TPM, and then it will enable it, and then set the local key protector, and then what it'll do is add the DVD drive. It'll load the ISO that I selected from the GUI, and then it'll set the ISO to be the bootable device, and then it's going to open up VM Connect with that, and then what it does is it updates the console with Start Machine, and all these updates are able to be seen from here. And then it's going to gain control of the keyboard and the system as well as the keyboard using those commands there, which you know, I talk about how all of these objects are part of the class factory, which is in. I'm going to wait for the GUI to get to the part where it's just going to install Windows before I go back to talking about the document. But you know, all these things are happening as the commands are being logged from to the console. And additionally, what was I going to say? So right now, the computer has gotten all the way to like there, and then now it's going to wait for the uptime to be less than 5 seconds, which it's not going to be less than 5 seconds until like this fully installs those files, and then it gets to 100%, and then it reboots. It reboots twice. It reboots the first time to like do initial setup after it installs the files, and then it will like launch itself again for the user to be able to finish the out-of-box experience information and stuff. So in this particular document here, let me close that, which can be found on my GitHub site. The link is it's in the first few seconds of the video in the font that I wrote. But I wrote this a few days ago, back on May 3rd, right? And then I created this document which shows like the class. It has a description, it has relevant information, and then it shows like the actual stuff from the editor or whatever. And then I just talk about like what all these things do. And one thing to keep in mind is that I write all my code here. I might not write every single function that I work on. For instance, I didn't write the PowerShell delivery stuff that Johan Arwood-Mark and Michael Nystrom wrote. I didn't write PowerShell. I didn't write Damien Van Robese's PowerShell all-in-one wizard. I didn't write Matt Bomb 122's original GUI or anything like that. I didn't create the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, but as you can see, what I do is I write all these classes that extend the capabilities of the actual functions, and then like I'm able to insert new methods that update some of the information or react to the input that the GUI is fed, or just in general the variables. So I'm using like the variable to show like what some of the information that you would see by using the GUI, right? And this is the actual image that it's using. I should probably add the thing for the hash value. That would be cool. That's not hard to implement. And like some of these methods, they they get the disk image information. If the disk isn't loaded, then it'll get the drive letter. And then if it's a Windows image, it'll have one of these files, install.wim or install.esd, and you need that in order to be able to get the Windows images from the image file, right? And continuing on, this particular object, image object, takes the image file class right here and the image edition class here, where the GUI or the installation process was able to select the correct edition automatically, right? And it makes it so that it's possible to serialize that information and then deserialize it. So the idea here is that the GUI, I need to fix that. It needs to have a little caret at the end. The idea is that once it exports a template file, then I can be able to reinstantiate like the controller somehow, right? And the image controller class is going to be able to look for like whether it's Windows image or it's not a Windows image. If it's not a Windows image, then it's not going to have an addition. It'll have the field there, but it'd be null. And all these things they sort of like automate the process to a large extent, and they borrow elements from previous videos that I've covered. The security option type is not applicable to this particular demonstration of Windows 10 installation or Windows 11 installation, but for Windows 10 it does. And yeah, the security option, most of this is antiquated or deprecated. And then also the country item. This isn't deprecated, but it's not like used because the default option is to install for Windows for the United States or whatever. And then also we got the keyboard input, and then it's got all that information there. If you were to like copy and paste this into the PowerShell console, it'll show you an array of all those strings. And the way that I compact that is so that it fits within this formatting for this document. And then the XAML properties. I'm not going to cover that in great detail, but it allows me to have multiple ways to be able to retrieve an object from the XAML object, or the window object. And here's the chunk of XAML that I wrote, and I formatted a certain way so that it doesn't exceed the character limit, and it has line wrapping. And then also, here, let's check the process of the installation. So it's at, okay, it rebooted, right, and then it popped out the ISO, right, unloading ISO, and as soon as the uptime hits 60, hold on a second, uptime less than 5 seconds, I think that it is in this first boot, and yeah, it says getting ready, so that's still going. But as you can see, that process where it installed the files for Windows took about 4 minutes and 34 seconds. And so this VM network host, some of the information that gets propagated to the template is here, right? And it has to be able to scan everything in the network that was selected in order to determine what IP address to use. And the idea here is that it's going to automate everything to the end machine, and then it's going to set up like a way to have that information be persistent. And then also contains the information for like setting up DHCP, DNS, ADDS, WDS, IIS, and MDT servers to utilize. And basically this uses a combination of stuff for like being able to have a WinRM or PS, enter PS session information, which is not WinRM, but it's darn close. Oh wait, no, it is WinRM, the PS session stuff. Anyway, this information here is able to reproduce the total number of networks, and then, you know, the DHCP server, if you were setting up a DHCP server, it'd be able to forward the information that it needs for that here. You could add options. I will at some point add the DHCP options into this again. I did that in the FV infrastructure video that I covered back in December of 2021. Anyway, then you get VM network node. It's going to basically, it's going to create the object either for like from the GUI to create the template, or it will recover the information from the template and then create the same object. And yeah, in order to get that class, you got to use that. You know, it's meant to like, this is a class factory type approach where it's going to take all that information and reinstantiate like information. So it's handling input, raw input, and then it's also handling file system input in order to create the objects. And then all of this stuff is going to create a network range. So like basically the expand option here is going to create a hash table, and then it's going to save the content of the hash table once it's all created to an array for output. And it's not going to do this if this is meant to be very quick. So I'll expand upon that at some point. This right here combines all the above network classes that have a property of the same name below, right? And yeah, so the top of the letter C has a little like extra amount of pixels. The top of the letter L has a bunch of extra pixels there. I'm not going to explain why that happens in this particular video, but just know that that's not an accident. And this control object here, it sort of takes all of those above classes and creates a class factory, so that it can reinstantiate all those objects and then actually work with it. So if I want to get the network range, it'll take the trusted item, split it, and then be able to get the net mask and split that, and then get the wildcard and split that, and then be able to calculate the number of available hosts on that particular network, and then it'll build the host range and save it to a string notation, and then also it'll say error if if the count is 0, which it shouldn't. But then it also, you can set the DHCP options, which it's not going to be applicable if it's not like going to be a server or whatever. And then here's like the raw input, the raw output from PowerShell, the control object. Right? Let's see the progress of this here. Alright, so now it's here. It's waiting for it to idle out. So I'm going to open this. Idle complete. Good. So now, like perfect timing actually. So the way this works is, in order to get the idle timer or whatever, I'm just resizing the box here and positioning it so that it makes the most visible sense. Once it gets to this, it's going to do this really cool thing with PowerShell where it writes that object to the screen. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, I'm going to highlight everything up until this part where the Android phone shows up, and then it's going to automate all of those keystrokes and everything. I'm going to keep it on here for now, that way people can see it. Though what I can do is talk about this and go back down to what was it? VM network control. So the VM network control object. Wait, that's the credential stuff. Sorry for scrolling around manually. I'm using a remote connection, and it's over slower Wi-Fi, so I can't really overload that. But here's the VM network master control, and the idea here is to have some sense of control over what goes into the templates as far as the networking is concerned. So we don't want the templates to contain information that has like a duplicate system on the network or whatever, right? And also, you can see the content here, and then if you want to do an internal ping sweep for any particular network that shows up, you can do that here. This isn't using the run space approach because this is meant for troubleshooting. I had to implement it in this class to do that, but I also implemented it further down. And all the credential types, and I'll go over that, but it's also in the document, right? And VM credential master. This takes all of the credential objects, the credential classes, and then creates a controller for it. And make a template for the list, the standard list, and to create a new credential object, a credential item, you use the GUI to be able to do that, and then what I can also do is deserialize the stuff that's in the output file. So once the GUI exported that template file, it had those variables and the methods for those classes in the method or whatever. But the thing is if you export something to an XML object, it's going to lose all of its methods and stuff. So you have to reinsert all of the properties and stuff, and that's what that does right there. And also set credential. You can use a password, and then it'll be a string password, which PowerShell will throw tantrum if you name a variable password. It'll give you a script underlying thing. Watch. Maybe it won't. Oh. Typically, that'll have a yellow squiggly line under it. It'd be you're not allowed to do that. No, it's not going to say you're not allowed to do that. It's just going to say, that's in bad taste, dude. You shouldn't do that. And then, the generate method is going to create anything between 10 and 16 characters long, and then it's going to create a bunch of random strings. And then you got the pattern for domain or whatever. I don't remember exactly what that one was. It's a password convention, I think. And then you got the random, get random min max. Basically, a lot of the methods that I use in these classes, they're touching on an actual command, get random. It's going to get a random number between min and max, and then it's going to return that number. And then, with a number, you can get a character back. And also, the setup is basically setting up a default password, the administrator password that was there, or the administrator account that was there. And then it's going to re-rank items so that, if you add an item, then it's going to have, the correct ranking. But it'll also, if you delete an item from that list, then it's going to re-rank it and then give it the new index that is selectable by the index or whatever. And this is very important actually. And let's see, add type username pass, right? And basically, it's basically the same exact thing right here, but it has the different approach: string approach, secure string approach. The GUI insert it's got a secure string, but there's a balancing act that goes on behind in the code behind as far as validating a password and the confirmation fields. So anyway, then you got VM byte size, which is basically the same thing as the image class up above, the one for the image byte size. And all that does is it just makes it easier to read the information on the screen for how large something is. And then you got the VM role, so to be a server, client, or Unix, I still have to expand upon that, and I'm thinking about other things to add to this, but the idea here is that the combo box in the GUI is going to allow someone to select a certain field, and then by changing the combo box, it's going to select the correct class and everything, right? And so VM-Template Network is going to be able to get the first available IP address, and it's going to insert all the information from the template area thing, right? And then, here, I'll switch back in a minute. It's gotten to the point where it's going to say, use your Android phone from your PC. And wait for the thing to error out. And now, there is erratic behavior going on here. I don't know why, but I'm going to, slowly do this. Alright. Then do that again. And then it gets the accessibility. Sometimes it skips that. And then there we go. So the way that the code is written would have worked. But, I wasn't taking any chances. Because I've had to record this numerous times because of that specifically. I had the code written exactly like that. And sometimes it selects the accessibility things and it goes into the magnifier area, which is sort of a pain in the neck. So I selected everything until it's going to idle out in the desktop. So I'm going to cover this stuff here. The VM template item is sort of getting information into the GUI, but it's also allowing information for the virtual machine to have some sort of idea for exporting the template file and everything. Some of these classes are going to look rather similar because it's combining information, right? This VM template file, this is pretty important because this is what it's saving to the file, right? It's going to have the name, the role, the GUID, it's going to have the accounts, it's going to have the selected image, it's going to have the IP address, the domain, the NetBIOS trusted address, so that it's able to be controlled over WinRM. It's going to have the network prefix, it's going to have the netmask, the gateway, it's going to have DNS settings, it's going to have DHCP settings if it's a server, which, a lot of these things might seem pretty intuitive, right? But it's sort of aggregating information from many of the above classes. Also, let's see the memory amount, right, and the HDD size. Those are byte sizes, and with those byte sizes they can be converted into a string using the class that I have up above. And also it's going to have the generation, it's going to have the core, and it's going to have the switch ID, which I'm considering changing that to an object, and then it would have the object. And changing things to objects is pretty useful, but then you have to have back-end code for it. Whereas with the string, you can use that as a property. Question mark, like a pipe symbol, question mark, property. And you can do it that way. And then also, let's see. So the template master allows the GUI to be able to interact with, either the GUI or the controller class to interact with template files or the template networks. And the template item is what it creates in order to create those files. So it might seem like some of this stuff is redundant, but when you hit the export button or you use this method, it's going to ask for the path, it's going to ask for the network, it's going to ask for the accounts that you want to use, it's going to ask for an index, which the index is basically if there isn't a template in the object already, then it's not going to work. It's going to say, nope, this is an invalid index, dude. I'm not allowed to do that. It's not going to say it's not allowed to do that. It's just going to say an invalid index. And here's the thing: when you use throw whatever, and you're using PowerShell to have a graphical user interface, that is going to cause the UI to break. So the idea is Finding a way to get it so that it doesn't break the UI from a run-spaced UI thread that allows a window to pop up that says invalid index. The easiest way to do that would be to do this. System dot windows dot message box show something bad happened. Error. Well, if I use that in this thread, it's going to walk up. Otherwise, it's just going to have an issue. But let's say that I did that over in this one. Right? I don't think it's actually going to work because I didn't load the forms thing. Oh, wait, it did. Look at that. Something bad happened. Now, if you get an error that says something bad happened, that's pretty vague. It's not very strict on what happened. So something bad, you'd be like, oh boy, something bad happened. And then you go around telling people something bad happened, and then you'd be like, okay. And then literally it says, okay, something bad happened. Okay. Well, a lot of people do that. Be like, something bad happened, and be like, okay. And I'm not saying that like everybody does that, by the way. But some people are pretty indifferent. Anyway, then you got the VM node DHCP, right? I'm going to let this idle out. I want it to get to a point where the virtual machine is not processing a single thing, which is going to cause the time to go up, but it's also going to allow me to finish like doing stuff here. What I'm going to do is actually drag this over here, and I'm just going to close out of that, right? Now, what was I going to do? Oh yeah, cover this. You know, it's just waiting for it to idle out. So I'm going to go back to this and talk about VM node DHCP. So this is meant to like strictly, it doesn't need to be implemented into the class because it has no methods. So if it's deserialized, then it's going to return all of those properties as is. The only time that you really want to worry about deserializing an object back into an object is when it has additional methods that influence like the outcome that you're striving to achieve. And then also VM node security is basically goes into like when I created the virtual machine, it looked for the VM security. It used the get VM security thing. So as you can see, get VM security of the VM name. Right, it's assumed that is an assumed parameter. It's a pretty safe bet that like the first parameter is going to be, oh, the VM name is this name. But you know, the proper way to do that would be to use this and put that here. Right? If you want to write scripts like Mike Robbins, then you don't want to do that. But you know, nothing against like having the parameter names there, but sometimes you can get away with without having to type in parameter names that have certain positioning in effect. So now that virtual machine has idled out, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight that code right there. And I'm going to hit that, right? And now what it's going to do is it's going to load the script block engine from the function that's part of the module, right? It's loading all of the scripts that were predetermined. And there's really no need to have the idle right there because this is all happening on this particular machine, not the virtual machine. But, you know, I do want, it is good practice to have like this there because it is processing something, and it doesn't mean that if it is processing something, it will actually cause an issue because you'll see in a moment here. There it is. It's loading PowerShell. Right? So now what I'm going to do is I have all this in green here because I'm not going to use this on every instance of the script. And I'm going to hit this. It's going to say, oh, I want to create a checkpoint. Oh, cool. So the reason why I did all that is so that like it's waiting for an idle state to make a checkpoint. And then what I'm going to do is this. Select that, hit F8. Now I don't know why that happens, but in order to get around that, I do this. Right, and it's going to load the thing that it was already using. Right, and then I can run that string again. So that error isn't something that I did wrong. I could implement, I did implement actually in this version of this function. I haven't updated the module yet, but at the very beginning it says import module Hyper-V, and EA0 means that it's going to nullify any errors that might have happened. Right, and then I'll bring it back down to there so I can expand upon that in a moment. Now it's created that checkpoint object. That checkpoint right there is the actual object that comes back from PowerShell. But if I do this, right, it's gonna like convert it into that. Right, it's gonna condense some of the information, and then also, like, let's say, hey, I wanna hang on a second. What was it? 507-173407. So if I want to restore that checkpoint, I just do this. Oh wow, how cool is that? You know, in the class that's there, it's going to do that by the name there. I don't have to put the full name of that checkpoint, and you know, some of this might seem like it's pretty intuitive. It's meant to take away some of the stigma of me like reinstalling everything from scratch so that I can test everything on the end of the script here. So everything that I've covered so far has got me to this point where I can work on this function. So this function right here is something that I started the other day. It's basically, it's meant to like well, I'm going to demonstrate it. I'm going to highlight all that stuff, and I'm going to select that. Right, now it's going to go out to the internet, and it's going to download that specific function that I put in a specific place, and it's going to execute it. And once that's in memory, then it's going to cast that variable, and it's going to insert all the information from the VM that it just like got from the output file. Alright, and you know, using the MSVM stuff takes a while for that to print out. Whereas, like now, what it's going to do is it's going to initialize all of the networking information and whatnot. So now it's going to have all the correct information needed to reach out to the server, and then it's going to avoid having to write things to file. And also control persistence sets some of that information for some of that information that it received to be able to save it to an object in the system. So now, I'm going to say vm.script. That's going to show something that I did the other day. Now the scripts that I want to select are numbered here. So this is basically a selection. I'm going to say, let's see how this goes. I want to do all this. It's going to load all those scripts into memory. It's every single time that it says control receive, it's going to wait for a connection. It's going to use the start TCP session, which I covered in a previous video, to send over additional scripts. Right, and the reason why I've divided them out is mainly because how can I put it this way? If I send over an entire script and then it fails at some point, it's going to prevent other steps of the script from working correctly. Whereas with this, I can actually have some control over what sort of issues it might have. And then every single time that the transmission completed, it says that. Right, so it's loaded all those things into memory, which I can say control.script list. Or actually, why don't I cover that? Right. It's got the network adapter. It's got the actual class that I covered up above, the VM FE Virtual VM Network node, and then it's got the return output from. Why don't I do this? It's going to be hard for people to see, so why don't I do this? 100%. Alright, so that's the object there. See how the DHCP field is empty, and if I say vm.network, it's got some of the same information there. It's a different object though, so vm network. It's not going to have all the fields there, but it is relatively close. It's got the domain, the net BIOS, the IP address is in a slightly different spot, but that's okay. Then it's got some information there that will help this system be able to instantiate or make damn certain that I need to update the interface thing. So control network. I want to cover this. The what the heck? VM node control interface, getting an IP interface. So control dot interface equals ctl dot get net IP address. Right, and now if I say control, oh, it's got the correct IP address now. Holy crap, that's pretty cool. Anyway, script list. Not all that different from vm.script.output. Let me see. At some point, these classes will be like basically identical or whatever. They're close enough. I'm basically trying to. I'm skipping some of these scripts because they're not all needed, since I've changed a fair amount of this function, and at some point I will remove some of these things from this function, but for the time being I have something to work with, and I can further shape and mold this particular script that has more control over the process. Right, so let's say control script list.0.content. Oh, cool. And what about one.content? Okay, so all this is verbatim information that I'm going to want to use in a moment here. I'm going to put the zoom level back to 75. I'm going to move this over here. And get it in the perfect spot. Yeah, there we go. Alright, so now it's going to get all this particular function here is basically meant to like make it faster, to make sure that the virtual machine is getting the correct information, and to use the TCP session thing that I created. So like sent over all those instructions without saving anything to a file. It's basically like setting up like an SSH session or something, right? And now what I can do is this. I can do this. Something didn't work. Oh, you know what? I screwed up. Yeah, that's not supposed to be there. Yeah, that control execute, like, is supposed to like control everything. Or I don't know. Let's see, ctrl.script list 1.execute. So for some reason it's not getting the information it needs for that from the second script. I don't know why. Well, I mean, these are things that I can manage. Or not the second script, yeah, the second script is number one. You know what, I think it's because, like, hold on a second, item, trusted host. Yeah, so those variables are staying within that class, and it's, I'm going to have to add this to the actual class. I was thinking of doing that, actually. But if I say, if I do this, right, now I can say item. Oh wow, that's the information I need in order to continue doing stuff. So what that is doing is it's setting up WinRM or whatever. Though it doesn't normally take that long. So these are things that I have yet to work out, right? And so, like, I'm troubleshooting as I go here. Alright, so why don't I do this manually? Right, say view, zoom level, 100% again. So I'm literally just going to like tape all that stuff and then just write it. Alright. Right here. And then this right here. str. Right, so the idea here is that I can splat the parameter, or splat the command for that. And then run this command. I think it already made the firewall rule, and that's why the thing did that. Alright, so it's got all of that now. Hang on, hold on. What was it? 4. Then I got to do a manual. I'm going to manually do number, what was it? There's no static IP, setting RM. What the heck? WinRM, WinRM, quick config, auto config. I think that's what it was. Yeah, I can't remember what it was. Oh, silent, that's what it was. What the heck? Oh, quiet. Oh, look at that. It like worked perfectly. So, then I'll go back to the other size there. Put this back to where it was. And a little bit of easing it up. Anyway, let's see. So a bunch of this stuff is like just sort of like spanning the same sort of idea. Really sort of like ends right there. That function that I'm working on in the script. But let's see. CTRL of that script. File. Execute. So now it's going to install the fighting entropy module right from the internet, and then it's going to allow me to use default tools that are part of the module. So basically, I don't know how else to describe what's going on other than like a lot of time and thought went into it, and now I'm able to provide commentary while describing what I'm doing in 1080p resolution from multiple computers in order to demonstrate that what I've been doing is pretty complicated. I forgot that it's trying to import the module right now, so I gotta close this. I had to tweak. I still have yet to like tweak like the scripts that are in this New-VmController thing, but you know, the last time that I updated that was back on that. So as you can see, like in order to further develop this, I have to like also develop this on the client side so that it has more control and everything. And you know, some of those steps that I transmitted. Let's do this. Now that it has run the thing for the first time, anytime you try to run the same keyboard command, what it'll do is this. It'll open Windows Terminal rather than the command window. Which, you know, it's an improvement, but it's going to cause an issue when I go to load the module. It's module get FE module mode 1. It's going to be set execution policy bypass scope process. That does it for this process, of course, and that won't switch, that won't ask for a confirmation. Now I can run it. Or what I could have done was this. I could have launched this, and then this will load the module as well, because the shortcut is made by the installation. And as you can see, that's still going because it's virtualizing Windows 11 on a machine that doesn't support Windows 11 natively or at all. It doesn't have a TPM 2.0 module in it, but I was able to virtualize it anyway. And you know, now see how like it's like overloading the lines or whatever. If I zoom out, then it'll fit. If I zoom in again, it won't fit. So there's that drawback, but it's not really a drawback so much as just a preference. Anyway, then I can continue to do stuff from here. Here, let's do this. Let's run. That's not it. No, let's do this. And that's going to get the thing again. And then this isn't going to do any of the same configuration with the system again, where it like changed all the network variables around. It's just going to set up that object that I was working with in the other instance of the PowerShells, whatever. I really don't know why it's hanging there when it tries to import the module. Let's see, CTRL, that brings up that. Alright, it's got all the correct information. And, you know, if I were to run the initialize thing again, control.initialize. If I did that again, I think that I programmed it correctly so that it won't actually update any of those things that it did. I'm not going to test it right now because I'm not certain that it won't cause an issue. I'd rather be certain with some aspects of this presentation. So where do I get to? FE module. Now I can run 10, 11, 12, 13. 10, 11, 12, 13. So now what I want to do is say list. List equal 10 to 13. I gotta load it. So now it's gonna send those things over again, and I think that's pretty cool because it avoids having to type out all those scripts. And then now all I can do is this. I can continue from where I left off. Right now it's gonna install Chocolatey. And then once Chocolatey's installed, then it's going to install Visual Studio Code. It could be like more than just Visual Studio Code. You can like install a whole bunch of stuff using Chocolatey. Chocolatey's a great utility, and I use it a lot. And the guys over at Chocolatey, like I think his name's Rob Reynolds or Ron Reynolds, Mr. Reynolds. He's pretty cool. And Gary Union Park. I don't know. I might have had miscommunications with these guys beforehand, but I'm looking past all that because the thing about cybersecurity is that sometimes you really have no access to know like who's responsible for what, and the safest bet you can make is to, you know, you want to assume that you didn't do anything wrong, but somebody did something. So you think about context. What happened at or about a certain time where something happened, and what were you doing? And then all of a sudden then you have like names of like suspects, but and then you might insult somebody by suspecting something. So be careful with that. Alright, I think at some point, like any miscommunication that you might have with somebody, you might be able to reconcile your differences, or you know, be able to make up for you know, lapses in judgment. And that's a pretty important part about life, is that a lot of people go through life thinking that they're perfect and they don't make mistakes, and that they're like, you know, like Prince Andrew, like I'm not going to talk about that right now. But anyway, it's also installing the PowerShell extension from the command prompt. And then it's ready to restart the computer. And so let's do that. I'm going to restart the computer. I didn't send over the script to restart the computer, but I could do that by doing this. Going up to here. Where is it? List 14. And then send over that script and then execute it. Oh wait, no. So if you use a token of -1, it's going to grab the last item in that array, and then it's going to do that. So now it's restarting the virtual machine. Now what I want to do is something I was working on in a video that I covered the other day. It's basically just going around and mucking about some of the tools that are deployed by the module that I installed, right? So, first things first. It's going to reboot, and then what I want to do is log in using the PIN that I set up. I just installing, I don't know, probably a couple updates. I'd imagine that it pulled some sort of update from Windows Update. You know, it's been a while since Windows 11 was released. And then insert the PIN that I created by using the graphical user interface in the beginning of the video. And so, now what I can do is multiple things. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to log back out as soon as this is up. The reason being is I'm going to do a couple of things. Actually, before I do that, here's what I want to do. What was it? PS session. Splat equals that, and then enter PS session splat. As soon as it like idles out, I guess. I can bypass that. I think I'm at a safe point in the installation where it'll sort of skip. I don't have to wait for an idle state. I think that will make the demonstration take longer. Account. I think that'll work. Pretty sure it'll work. So now what it's doing is it's remotely connecting to that machine, I think. Pretty sure. Should have worked. Well, I'm not going to troubleshoot that right now. But what I am going to do is I want to do this. Oh, it didn't rename the computer. That's a issue. That might be the reason why it didn't work. So I'm going to close out of the RDP session. Yes. Oh wait, I closed out of the wrong RDP session. Make sure you close out of the correct RDP session, because then you'll have to log back in. And then, yeah. So, that's what I want to close. Alright. So what I want to do is, oh great, so now basically I lost the console here, which sucks, but let's see, let me go into this. Basically, I'm going to write some stuff up here, and then copy and paste it there, and then run it. Yeah, I don't know why, but like if you disconnect from an RDP session while the console is open, it starts pumping out like indiscernible crud. But I don't know. So I need to make sure that New-VmController is added to that script. New-VmController. What was the desktop? 01. Force. And then restart computer. Now I think that will fix the problem, like being able to connect with RDP or PS session. I might not even have to like use the splat command again for that. There we go. That's a PS session. Yeah, it's gonna be hard to like see whether it's working or not. Yeah, I don't think it's gonna work. So I'll have to troubleshoot why that's not working. But basically, I think that I've demonstrated like a number of things that were successful in this particular video. But you know, I still have a little bit more to explain here. Which way do I want to go with it? So as you can see, like there's 3 different like scripts that I have to work on to sort of like continually work on this, right? So what I want to do is RDP. Right, I want to join it by its name. What is it? So if I can join an RDP session, then I should be able to join a WinRM session. I think I just need to modify a couple of options for WinRM. I think that it is engaged, but a couple of other options need to be implemented. I think it said like I needed to add it to like trusted user or whatever. And yeah, so anyway, this is all up now. I don't know why, but it keeps like creating multiple shortcuts there. Yes. And then that's the VM node thing, which I can delete that. Now what I'm going to do is launch Visual Studio Code. As an administrator. Got it. And I think as soon as I like open this, I can select the color theme that I installed. It installed correctly. Yeah, as you can see, choosing a version PowerShell. Yeah, there it is. Cool. So now it's got all this stuff here. Let's just say new text file. PowerShell. Alright, so there were a number of things that I did in a video that I didn't release the other day. And anyway, here's what I'm going to do. Get FE module. Get FE system. Get Viper bomb mode 1. I think that's the GUI version. And get FE network. And then spawn all these. And I'll make a custom class. Post post install object system object network object Viper. Actually, I'm not going to do that. And maybe I will actually post install. And then what it's going to do is I'm going to say I think that's going to work. It's going to take a minute to run all this, but let's see. F8, and that gets it all into the thing. CTRL. I like to use the CTRL variable. Now what it's going to do is going to run through like all the functions that the module like installed. So get FE module, it's going to get like the core components of the module, various properties related to the module that I've been developing, including all the functions that were just demonstrated so far. Get FE system is going to get like a pretty, you know what, I didn't put the mode in for these, so it's going to pull the default mode. And it is going to run a little bit sluggishly because of it's not it's basically it's overproducing output, which I was using for debugging to figure out where stuff broke or whatever. And you know what, I'm going to cancel it actually. While I get less fancy with it. Let's see. That's the wrong one. I want it to be the full version of that, and then mode 7. Alright, so that's going to be a minute to load all of that. Anyway, while that's loading, here's what I can do. I can minimize that in this, and I can go over more of this. So all of the things that it was able to spin up are from this document that I wrote about the function that was covered, that I hadn't updated since like May 2nd. It's May 7th, and yeah, I'm gonna have to like update the stuff in this document here. Let's see, view. Okay, it is showing a web layout. I don't know why that's showing up like that. It shouldn't be showing up like that in the web output. Might be, I think I might use a line break there or something. Anyway, why don't I scroll down past the credential stuff? I'm sure like I covered that already in during the installation. some of that. That's basically the object that gets instantiated or written in the file. All that stuff showed up in the combo box in the GUI. And scroll down to, yeah, this is the security property with, if I go to key protector and I change everything from basically it's a number, it's a byte array, and then if I convert it to a character array, then it turns into this. So it's basically a signed certificate, self-signed certificate. And then the node image deserializes the image information, which might not be necessary because it doesn't have any methods. And then let's see, node template. So the file, it gets written in the file, and then in order to turn it into an object, again, you can use this, and then it'll take various properties and then implement the classes that it just covered, and then it'll come back to this object, and then the node item. I think this is deprecated, that one in particular, and then oh wait, no, it isn't. I think this is, I don't know. This handles the switches. This handles all of the virtual machines that are existent. Any existent switch or virtual machine is going to show up with limited information from the exact item, and then populate it into the GUI. The objects that are shown in the GUI are further down, but basically they act as a helper item. And then the node slot is what shows up in the GUI, I think. Yeah, it is. No, actually, you know what? These items show up in the GUI. And then the node script block line is just a line of the script. And this, I won't be able to show it because it's not showing the console output now. Let's see. Or why don't we do this? Say vm dot what was it? Dump console. And then what I'll be able to do is I'll be able to close this and reopen it. And while that's doing whatever it's going to do, so to be able to control the objects, I do have to call this back into memory, this function right here. It's going to import the module, and then it's going to import everything that it needs. Right, and then, okay, so this is what I wanted to show off before. This is going to show off various information about the operating system, the BIOS information, the operating system, all the hotfixes that were installed or what came with it by default, and the computer system. I'm going to fix that. The processor, I think selecting this is going to cause it to crash. Yeah, it did. Anyway, yes. Things that I need to get around to finishing, but your module gets some of that information that you saw, and system. So I don't think I've featured or covered this in a video quite yet that I published, but this right here just provided a lot of information for the GUI that you just saw, and I don't have services in here quite yet because it's part of the ViperBomb thing. But ViperBomb calls upon a get FE system, and it also The idea that I have is to merge all of these individual functions into one control function, and kind of tall order because all these things are pretty meticulous. Let's see, system.snapshot. Here, let me copy and paste all this so that I can. Alright, system snapshot. Alright, it's going to give me some information which needs to be updated because it's not the October 2020 update. It is a professional edition and it is a mobile laptop, so some of that stuff is showing up correctly. And then BIOS information. There you go, you get the information that showed up in the graphical user interface just now. You get more information about the computer system, like the hardware and the type and everything. It's a virtual machine, so it's not going to say anything like hardware related. Operating system. And then it's going to say Windows 11 Pro. It's going to tell you the version, which it showed the version in the GUI in the very beginning. It didn't show the build number. Well, the revision. It didn't show the revision, so I gotta get that to show the revision. And then, let's see, system.hotfix. It's gonna show the list object, which is that, which just kind of maintains order. But when I get the actual output, there it is. And that's not all that different from the actual get hotfix command. All these things sort of touch on all that. And I can get like the optional features that can be installed. And then application.output, which there aren't a lot of applications installed other than the ones I used. That I installed with Chocolatey. Output. It's going to show like all the log names, which this is going to be expanded upon with another function that I've already been I put a hold on developing that for a while because the event log is pretty meticulous and it's got a lot of information on it in it, even for a brand new system. And also task.output. So it's going to look for anything that's showing up in Panther, what was installed via Panther. This is all stuff that comes with the system by default, basically. And then go to appx.output. And the Viper Bomb utility covers some of that. Processor.output. And that's going to get the number of processors. It's going to get the list of the disks. And now this object is a bit complicated and it's got additional subtypes. So if I go to partition.output, format table, it's going to get all the partitions and stuff. And then if I change partition to volume, it's going to get me the number of volumes. And that this whole disk.output stuff is pretty complicated actually. There's a lot of things that it does to be able to get all the information and format it correctly, so it shows the size, it shows the free space, it shows the use. And it'll get like the partition that the C drive label is attached to, and it'll get it all like, right there. Basically touching on, I can't remember, I think it's like, I don't know, the backwards way of using like disk part without the GUI, or whatever disk part uses. Or no, the disk part is a command line thing. I'm talking about disk management. diskmgmt.mmc or whatever. And to say, go to system network.output, and now it's going to show like a couple of adapters by default. So all that information is like basically the information that the GUI made. It implemented some of these properties and stuff, right? And then like when I run msconfig on this particular system, then some of that will come back. And now network. So that is a really extensive look at, hang on a second, I'm going to hit refresh. For whatever reason, the compartments always wind up at 0 unless you run it again. Let's hit network refresh. And that'll refresh all the adapters and the templates. So the template sort of aggregates all the information that's seen here, or the compartment. I think I have to show the whole list. So it's touching on like a bunch of WMI objects in order to like reproduce some of this information. But for each adapter that's in the system that's connected or whatever, it's going to have an IP address that's a address family of 4, and then it's also going to have an address family of 6. So if an adapter has multiple IP addresses, then this compartment idea is going to get all of the addresses for that particular adapter, right? And then it's also going to pull the information from like the network route stuff. So output, let's say output 1 or 0, and I say root for network, right? And so that information right there isn't like it's not something that is pulling from the template. It's what's being pulled from like WMI, and the reason that it looks similar is because that's what I've been shooting for, is to make it so that it's congruent, and ordering the parameters and properties in certain ways so that it looks visually appealing when you look at it. Well, it is visually appealing when you look at it. And then you go to root, and that's got to have all the network roots, hops, right? And only applies for that address type. And then extension. So if I wanted to do a ping sweep or whatever, I think that's here. Yeah, I can't remember. I'm not going to use that right this second. Yeah, so that's what it has to do in order to like aggregate all that information. So this right here is like an extended look. It's going to replicate some of these properties and the information and stuff, but you know, using that, I can sort of like look for individual IP addresses in the system and be able to propagate all the information to like a GUI or like, you know, whatever, or like a spreadsheet for each adapter. You know, here's this system with this adapter, with this IP address, with this gateway, with this name, or this interface description, with this caption, with this availability. Yeah, some of this stuff is like it's shooting over. It is overshooting the level of necessity needed for certain things, but it is comprehensive, and it's sort of putting it all into a single place or a single control, right? So that's the idea behind that. If I go into a vendor, it'll show all the vendors, right? The MAC address vendors. So the number on the left, that's the index, and then the number in the middle, that's the hex value for that represents the manufacturer, whatever, on the right. So they're the manufacturer for those network interface cards. And deck class.output. It's going to show like everything between 1 and 2 to something, 255, which is broadcast, right? And network.arp.output. It's going to show everything that showed up in the ARP table, right? And then it's going to like show like what type of thing it is. So if it's got the host max, that means like the broadcast, or it's the last host, or the, I don't know. And it's ARP list and then NBT. And this is needed for the DC promo utility that I wrote, or in the process of continuing to write. And part of what I spend a lot of time doing is trying to make it so that, oh, output.output, oh, that's dumb. Why not change it to something a little bit more, cohesive? The only reason that I consider that dumb is because repeating, those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. So I really don't want to repeat output twice if I can help it. But anyway, if this were an Active Directory loaded system, which it isn't yet, then this module would be able to get the information it needs to be able to find a domain controller on a network. And then say netstat.output format table. So then I can look through this, see the number of ports. I think these are all Microsoft, right? I have a utility called getWhoisUtility, but I'm not going to cover that because I need to update that. It's not working correctly. And then what was it? Network dot adapter. It's going to show all the adapters. Show all the configurations for those adapters. It's a different thing. The adapter has its own thing, and the adapter config is its own thing, though they both tie to the actual adapter. And then network dot root dot output. So that aggregates all the information, but it also filters it out so that you get the interface index and then you get the address family. And some of the properties that they use by default are rather long-winded, and it makes the output a lot longer than it needs to be, which is why I use some of the methods that I do to shorthand property names. Network.interface. It's going to get all the interfaces in the system, which, an interface is just a software thing. The adapter is the hardware thing. The interface is the software thing. Pretty sure I'm explaining that correctly. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. The interface is basically, it ties to the IP address that it's got. So it's got a local loopback for 4, it's got a local loopback for 6, and then it's got an address for the Ethernet, and it's got an address, Ethernet on address family 6, and then IP, which is sort of just like an extension of interface. Some of this stuff does seem redundant. Don't get me wrong, I'm not oblivious to that, but let's see. We'll load this again. And now that's basically going to load a lot of the same information that we've seen already. Anyway, while that's loading, it's already loaded. Viper. So as you can see, some of that information is the same, and it does need to be updated. and some of this information I've been able to allocate to other methods or properties or whatever. It's sort of like I don't know. In order for a program to be efficient, you have to have a number of approaches, and then like out of those approaches, look for the thing that's the most efficient. And if you have to log along a whole bunch of information in order for one piece of that information to be available for another function or method or whatever, that's not very efficient. So what is the way to find out the balancing act? That's hard to do in many cases, but let's say Viper dot, what was it? Stage name movement. What the heck? Alright. So I'm just going to try this again. Yeah, that didn't work. Let's try get Viper bomb. Let me try running that again. I'm pretty sure that I had a working prototype of this function. And you know, if I work on something for a while and I'm like stuck on something very minute and like doesn't seem to matter in the grand scheme of things, then I might get like tunnel vision or whatever. Yeah, see, I don't know why I was doing that. I'm going to move on for now and talk about module. So module has a number of sub-properties and stuff, so module.os, right, it's got all that information there, very descriptive, right, so if I say property, oh no, that's not right, what was it? Sort of does the same thing that I showed off with the network adapter, where the sources of like information and stuff, the environment variables, they're all there, and the regular variables, those are all there, and then you get the host, the PS version host table or whatever, and then PowerShell PS version. I don't know why that just glitched out right there. And module.root. That's going to get all that and say list. And then all that stuff exists. So this module thing, it acts as a function that gets the information to go over all the prerequisites and to install it and remove it as needed. So say module.manifest, and then I say output. So this is the source of where all the files come from, and then this is the path to where all the functions are downloaded to, so I can edit them, or you know, anybody can like open it and look at it in order to like determine whether or not they find the coding to be friendly or foe, right? And it's basically open and accountable. That's the idea. Output, let's see, full. It's going to get me all of the contents of the module. You know, like, it's getting all that information into like a class that can literally retrieve the file from where it is on the internet if need be, and then it can validate it and it can cross-check the hash values and stuff. And let's see, if I do this, it's going to cut some of the information off, but that's okay. The next thing I can do is say module validate. So what that does is it looks for all the files, and then it'll say, oh, validating the module manifest. I'm going to say, oh, something, 4 files failed validation. Oh no. Yeah, that's okay though. I'm not going to cover that right now, but it'll tell me which ones failed to validate with a function that I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but let's see, module dot registry and property. So you get all the properties that are injected into the registry in order to instantiate the module a little bit more quickly. And so like importing the module, it's going to do all that. As you can see, I'm pulling a bunch of things from the assembly in order for the presentation framework to work and all of that. And then module.manifest dot output 1 item. So what that does is it keeps track of all the individual functions, and it allows me to like have some kind of like understanding of what to work on or what to eliminate without having to like manually edit a file that's going to get lost in confusion and stuff. And I might be putting a lot more in here than need be, but the idea is that everything that I'm working on sort of depends on stuff I've already written or whatever, you know, screen resolution, manifest, output, item. Hold on a second. So it's all C# code, and I didn't write it, but I was using it for the PXE environment in the PowerShell deployment method, which it doesn't have a native way to change the resolution or whatever. And I think that's going to do it for this particular part where I'm showing off like the module after it's installed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this. And then what I'm going to do is relinquish its existence. Oh, I didn't do the thing yet. So if I do this, then it'll allow me to relinquish its existence. Yeah, the keyboard I'm using isn't like the greatest, so that's why I keep mistyping or typos or whatever. And so, oh, it's all gone. Oh man. So I showed you a graphical user interface that installs a whole bunch of stuff and automates a whole bunch of things that I need to finish. And it's rather elaborate, and you know, I'm just one guy on a mission. You know, so it's still destroying the thing. Going back to the document, let me continue covering that. The script block controller is meant to make it so that every single individual script. Let me get back into this. Is it done yet? No. So every individual script that's part of this function, I want to take it out of this function, and then I want to implement a new function for each individual type. You know, and it's like the balancing act of doom. And what I'm going to do is copy and paste this. You know, I don't want to paste it there. I want to go to the logs directory. So every single time that I use this function, it's going to create these log files, and some of them are a lot longer than others. The one that I had to run before I closed out the Visual Studio Code editor and then opened it back up is this right here. And what the hell? Am I losing connection here? Yeah, okay. So, all the things that pop up in the console are right here. And if I didn't run that command, it wouldn't have output any of this, because then it would have overwritten everything. But, the PS session token would fix that. Numerous things that I gotta address. But, you know, all this stuff, it was fully installed at, where was it? Restoring checkpoint. So at that. I deleted the VM and the checkpoint, but what I could have done was launch that back up again, and then you know, continued going onward. And finding a clever way to implement a way to do creating file and then saying add content, I think is sort of I don't know, adding content to a file takes a little bit longer than just writing things to an object. An hour and 10 minutes, whereas that was, and then, you know, I can delete all these log files, and most of them are just kind of whatever. They help with development, but yeah, this Wi-Fi adapter sucks. That's why it's glitching out. Anyway, when I ran the thing, that's what it did. And then deleted all the files that it created, or was able to ascertain by querying the WMI objects for the virtual machine and stuff. Some of the stuff isn't working exactly correctly. I don't want it to make the AVHDX file, but I think that's automatic. I don't know. I'm gonna close all that. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to minimize this. And then talk about the script block controller. Oh yeah, that's right. VM.script. So it's got nothing there, but if I say load, it's loading everything from this function here. VM.script. There we go. So I did pull this up earlier and did a comparison between what was on the virtual machine and what's here. And at some point these will be the same objects, and they'll have similar information, though the process has evolved. Basically every time that I would install Windows onto a customer or client's device or network of devices, I would have to have a script for apparently being a butterfly is a crime. Apparently. I would have to run through a number of options, or not options, procedures to, you know, install the operating system for a customer, install the programs that they wanted, and transfer all their data or files, and then get them acquainted with how things would be from that point forward. A lot of times, the customer would be like, I didn't want you to do that. but they did blindly agree with like the thing that was suggested to them. And I began to pick up on this sense of like, all right, need to be a little bit more proactive than to just throw like the clients or customers into this situation where now they didn't know that they were going to lose certain aspects of their experience. And so then development with like PowerShell. I started working with it several years ago, and at some point it's going to tie back around to like the stuff that lap-link PC mover would do, and that's why I covered the system get FE system thing, because that's going to be, or get Viper Bomb, because that's going to be an extension of that, and it's also going to include like group policy management type stuff. But none of that is really here. A lot of this stuff can be handled with group policy, but you know, if this isn't part of a corporate network, how are you going to get it to like be like, I don't know, have feature parity, right? Some of this stuff isn't like counterintuitive, and a customer's going to be like, oh, I got to enable file and network sharing in order to like share stuff between like my computers at home. Yeah, you got to do that. But you know, if you're running a computer shop and you format and reload an operating system on a customer's device, and you only carry over like their files and some of their applications, they're going to lose like all this stuff that they thought was going to be there, and the stuff isn't exactly intuitive. And yeah, that's the point of like doing all this. And some of this stuff is meant to be flexible so that it'll work with a server, or it'll also work with Linux. Though I featured a video called RHEL deployment a few weeks ago. I didn't go into great lengths about how to like further configure that, but at some point it will have like a similar function that allows things to be transmitted by using the TCP session thing. So like, here, why don't I cover that? Open file, start TCP session. It's part of the module. So this right here utilizes like these class types that Microsoft has covered, and where they're covered is in that link right there, and this is all part of the module. I haven't updated it since then. I think that's when I made the video. But I saw that there would be something incredibly useful from being able to transmit the scripts like I did, and the payoff was pretty enormous. It's not to say that like everything that I've put together is like fleshed out or complete, but what I can say is that all these functions sort of touch on the original reason why I went into like this bat cave of operations to like, you know, build a program that doesn't exist yet. You know, portions of the program exist. Script block controller. Every single script is saved to this, right? And then you know, the control variable, which is it's the class that's further down. It allows this script block controller to be its own object, and then every single time that you run a script, it's going to edit the properties here rather than the variables. So once you have like this master class at the bottom, like called into memory, then what you can do is you can run various methods that call upon. What did I do? That call upon like this particular class, and then it has its own methods, and it's basically its own object, but you know, it's part of an ecosystem of functions and methods. And these methods that are part of that ecosystem, they touch on actual commands and stuff, and it's meant to like shoestring together a whole bunch of different components of the operating system and etc. Right? So VM property output, this is basically like all of the properties for that particular virtual machine or instance of virtual machine, and there's a GUID there, which is renamed the ID, and then the node checkpoint, which saves the checkpoint to like an object within the master class, and then the node network sort of covered that already, but this is the information that's propagated to the virtual machine, which I showed some aspects of that. And here's the output, similar output. The node object has the actual virtual machine object will be right there. The mode, basically the mode controls whether or not it's going to print everything to the console. And let's see, node role, start console, they all touch on the console object, New-VmController, which is basically part of the module. And then all these methods here, they sort of like control everything, right? So this is the object that the VM variable is tied to. All the stuff that I was using to control the VM all call upon this object. So I don't have to type in a parameter or like a command with a dozen parameters in order to like further control this thing. It's basically using variables in a script. It has a script scope, right? You can use like global colon the variable name, and then that'll be a global variable. That'll be that biggest scope, and then within additional scopes, then you'll have other basically properties. You know, like every single time that you use one of these classes, it's going to have an inside scope. So like if you set a variable name within here, right, like you can use a variable as a parameter, and then it'll influence all the properties and stuff. And that's important because if you're trying to make it so that you have one input object and it's not a specific object, it can be either a node, it's going to be either an existing virtual machine, or it's going to be the template file, and it has to be able to reproduce the control in either situation. And that's why the switch is here, so that it can sort of like aggregate all the information and be congruent. And you get the start console that reaches into that, and it gets the console to start. And then, you know, anytime if it's in mode 0, then it's going to write the last line to the console, which it's doing that anyway. But yeah, there's certain things that I still have to like work on. But basically, the VM variable is supposed to work without the control variable being needed. So if I wanted to, I can make a function that just focuses on the node object, which is the point of like where is it? It's the point of this. So at some point, this function is going to call on like the VM node thing. The thing is if you like implement this on the actual node, and you want to tell the virtual machine that like it needs to do something, and you tell it within the virtual machine, then it's not going to do whatever. It's going to throw a bunch of errors. But it's still the same object. It's just what scope is it being called from. So these things are important to note and keep in mind, right? Being able to implement run spaces to make certain that the UI thread doesn't lock up isn't something that I'm concerned about right yet, though it will be at some point, and that's why like certain things aren't yet implemented into the GUI, so I can control things all from like, you know, similar scope. Now, start TCP session is pretty important because I think that this can be implemented on Linux. I think it can be. I don't know if PowerShell Core supports this class. I know that PowerShell Core on Linux, it has a lot of the things there as placeholders, but the functions aren't there. Like, I don't know. I'm not going to expand or explain how or why that's the case, but like I think anybody that works at Microsoft will agree with me on that. Yeah, a lot of things are there as placeholders. Michael Cook, you're right. So then I'm going to minimize that, go back to the document. So the node object is very important, very critical, but it's also able to be controlled. This object will be controllable from the GUI. And then it'll have all the console output being created here, and it'll output it to the GUI. A run space GUI that's running multiple threads to manage virtual machines like not things out of this world. And like, you know, one of the, what's his role? Vice President of Marketing, Michael Nyhouse, right? He's like the genius that came up with the business desktop deployment tool, BDD, Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, relies very heavily on the Business Desktop Deployment Tool, and with MDT you can further manage WDS, Windows Deployment Services, which allows control over the installation of Windows Server or Windows 10 or 11. I haven't experimented with MDT in Windows 11 quite yet, though I don't see how it would be that much different than Windows 10. Let's see. All of these methods sort of touch on things that I've explained already. Restore checkpoint, you could use the index, right, and it'll look for it that way, or you could use the string and it'll do it that way. And then you see it is complicated, all this stuff. The measure, I'm not using that actually, although it's there. And get registry path, that looks for where the stuff is in the registry so that it can save the computer info natively, or not natively, but a persistence. And with a combination of like registry entries and files and environment variables, you can reproduce like controls so that like they can be like information can be serialized so that it can be saved to a file, and then it can be deserialized and then have its methods reintroduced to that object. And those things are pretty important if you're trying to do more than just write casual scripts that you run every once a month to manage a whole bunch of company resources or whatever. And I'm not trying to discount anybody that does that, but what I'm saying is that I'm putting a lot of thought and effort into all of this, not just documenting it, but making it like appealing to look at and use. Though I understand that like some people are going to be like, you know what, you're not Mike Robbins and you're not Don Jones, you're not Michael Nyhouse. No, I know, I'm my own guy, and all these guys have like contributed to the community a lot. And did somebody at Microsoft tell Red Rover to move over, named Jeffrey Snover? Well, I don't think Jeffrey Snover told anybody nicknamed Red Rover or anything similar to move over, but now we have PowerShell, and Jeffrey Snover was a big part of that. Jeff Snover is, I forget his exact title, but like what he like pioneered working at Microsoft with a bunch of guys standing around, sitting around in a circle, talking about how to make the next big thing at Microsoft. I think they smacked a grand slam with PowerShell, because doing all this with C# would be pretty difficult to do. Not saying that it's impossible to do, but having all these variables helped me sculpt the entire process, right? And so this object right here extends the above class, the node object, and then it provides all the scripts. And then this is sort of what I want to implement in its own function, so that like you could sort of like task sequences in the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit. You could take all the task sequences, and then you can have like default task sequences that sort of set up the operating system as a baseline, and then you can have extended properties and stuff. These are things that are covered in Microsoft Deployment Toolkit and System Center Configuration Manager, right? And System Center Virtual Machine Manager, and set persistent info. See how this line right here looks like it's got an extra line of pixels in it, but the rest of them don't? Yeah, it's because someone really cool is causing that to happen. And let's see. The information here was sent over by the script delimiters that I used, where when I said list equals 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 10, 11 through 15, That's because it's selecting. I was cherry picking which of these functions I wanted to propagate to the machine, the virtual machine with the TCP session object. And then also WinRM firewall. I think something that I did there needs to be amended. I think I just tried to add the firewall rule multiple times, and that caused an issue with me being able to use enter PS session. Though I've covered, like, I haven't changed much about the code in order to be able to do that. In order to do this, right, see how like I'm using like single quote here and then double quote there and then a tilde symbol and everything, is because like I have to be very considerate about like the target machine having things in the correct scope and everything, and I have to like manually make sure that I'm using things in a certain way so that like it'll work. Like all of this code will allow WinRM to work, right? It's not that intuitive, believe me. Oh, that's what I forgot to set, was that. So that's why it didn't work. I gotta add that line. And you know, these lines right here are meant to like tell the virtual machine, the control object, like, hey, if it says this in a line, you need to like just chill out for like 2 seconds. You know, I don't want the target machine to like enter that in. I only want it to enter that in like if there's no human present, and then, you know, wait 3 seconds there, dude. And then, you know, if the role is a client, then you have an extra step, so that's got to be there. And then, you know, basically, you know, Cyber Commando back cave of operations. It's basically what all this is. Some dude is sitting in a bat cave who's a Cyber Commando, not unlike Rex Power Colt. And if I need to explain who Rex Power Colt is, he is the main character in the game Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. You know, and it's basically a pretty cool game where you go around and you beat the crap out of blood dragons. And you have to look for VHS tapes that are scattered all throughout this like weirdly colored landscape of Doom. You know, in a dystopian future when Canada nukes the United States, and then I don't know. I really don't think Canada's ever going to nuke the United States because of like how positive our relations are. Though I don't want to say like all Canadians love all United Americans and vice versa. I think it depends on a case-by-case basis. But anyway, like if I were to install like a Windows Server 2016 or 2019 or 2022, I would want it to touch on another function I made where it initialized FEAD, right? And I wanted to shorthand the amount of code that I was sending over there, right? And then, you know, I covered this in a previous video or whatever, and some of my information is in there. You know, it doesn't have my social security number in there, so I think I'm good. But yeah, beginning to fight against ID theft and cybercrime. I think that's something to consider, is that I know how to manage like Active Directory instances. I know how to set up like a whole bunch of stuff ahead of time, like a wizard would. You know, like Michael Myhouse and Paul Allen. You know, guys from Microsoft that worked with Bill Gates and Stephen Ballmer and Satya Nadella, and then they looked at each other and they said, you know what, we're going to make the best goddamn program that was ever made. And they just keep doing it too, because they're never ever they're never satisfied with just enough. They need to keep going. And you know, yeah, I don't know. That's the VM Node Windows and then VM Node Linux, which I covered in the RHEL deployment. I've made some changes to it since then, but I haven't demonstrated it. And you know, some of the things that were in this particular class I implemented in the main class, and both of those classes use the same method to type in text now. But typing in text with the MSVM_keyboard class is time consuming, because if it's not time consuming, then it will likely mistype something, and then you have to go back and then do it all over again. And there would be a way to send everything over with one command in the fewest amount of time possible, but there is a reason why things need to be kept separate. Right? It's because if you combine everything together, it will cause problems to happen, and you won't have a way to manage those problems or handle the errors. And that's the point of all this. I might have spent, how long? 2 hours and 20 minutes, talking about all this in this video and everything, but, I think what I've managed to accomplish with this particular video is the amount of work that I did since the last video, our HEL deployment, and the number of videos that I've made since then. I haven't been able to explain things and document them and be very meticulous about documenting the program that I made to do all these amazing, cool things, not like System Center Configuration Manager, think Michael Nyhouse. I think he's a pretty smart dude, and looking at some of his scripts on his GitHub project years ago, gave me the inspiration to come up with all this, as well as his interview with Techgenics. And I didn't think I was going to get into the nitty-gritty of all the things that I did, but I think all this stuff is pretty important in order to be able to take a stab at trying to make something that's rather elaborate, or I don't know. This object right here is just meant to control the objects in the data grid that say name and value, and that's the output. So this is the output that was seen in the node host extension when I clicked on the object in the last pane that said node. It came up with all these objects, which is sort of like the node property object, but it's taking out only the name and the value. It's not getting the type. It's not getting the other properties, type, name, and value, which you would want to reproduce a class. Right, and then VM-controller flag. This allows me to use the pipe symbol and the question mark in order to be able to look to see if, hey, is the one that says master path, is that legit? Is it did it pass? Oh, okay, then it did. All right, now we can show the green circle with the check mark. But if it says 0, then it's going to show the red circle with the white X, and it's going to respond to event handlers that are tied to the GUI. These are all things that are not very intuitive. The event handlers are pretty complicated, but once you find out how to use them, then they're not. And being able to manage tasks from PowerShell is also pretty difficult, because in C# all you have to do is say task and then whatever, but in PowerShell you have to go into the assembly and then go to the inner depths of all of the assemblies and the code that they produce in order to pull out a certain property that you want, and then you got to be able to select which property from that array that you want, and then you got to make sure that you're putting in a quote, or not a tilde. You want the object list tilde 1. You don't want the object list without the tilde 1. You need the tilde 1 there, and they will tell you, yep, you need to make sure you have the tilde 1 there if you want it to work. If you want it to not work, don't use the tilde 1, and then it just won't work. And they'd be like, well, I want it to work. And then they'll be like, well, then you need to use the tilde 1. You can't not use the tilde 1. VM controller node switch, and then that basically I can create switches from the GUI, and then anything that shows up in the data grid box is going to be reproduced by this. The VM controller master, this is it. I made a lot of references to System Center Configuration Manager, but when you need a system at the very center of it all, one that can manage configurations, virtual machines, or reflyable buildings like the SpaceX Starship, you need something that is extremely high fidelity. Something that had a lot of time, thought, attention, focus put into it so that it was engineered to work. Reading this out loud has a different feel to it, but I don't know. Basically what I'm getting at is I'm trying to make it sound wicked cool. Reflyable building. Is the SpaceX Starship does it qualify as a reflyable building? And if so, is it the first one in existence? I think so. It's meant to be flown again. Though I think that they expected the rocket to explode a few weeks ago, or a few days ago. I don't remember what it was. April 19th, I think it was, 2023. And then a bunch of people got really mad at SpaceX. How dare you blow up another rocket? This is a catastrophe, Elon Musk. How dare you try to make the world a better place by making SpaceX Starship? We gotta clean up all of this stuff. Yeah, well, I don't see anybody getting mad at NASA. People have historically gotten mad at NASA for making things that blow up, like the Challenger. I think a lot of people were pretty upset with NASA for that. But the thing is, it's they're doing things that are experimental that have never been done before, and if they make a mistake, it's very costly. A lot of people are going to get upset no matter what. But those mistakes are bound to happen. That is the nature of doing things that have never been done before. Anyway, the ping sweep thing here touches on create run space in order to get to do a ping sweep. All right, some of this I managed to combine by looking at stuff by Boprox. Boprox has a module called RS Jobs, and you have to install a module, and they'll be able to use that. And you also have to, if you want to use thread jobs, which Adam Driscoll covers, then you have to install thread jobs. But if you use the native code that comes with the operating system and you know how to use it, then this is what you have to do. And let me tell you, it is not intuitive at all. You want the code right there to work in the run space, but you want only the output, so that's where it is. Boprox uses a lot of PS object or PS custom objects, and not like I have anything against PS custom objects. The classes that I write, they basically are custom objects, but they have methods, and that's why I use them. You can use add code property or script method or code method. I don't know. I don't use them. I would rather use these this way in order to reproduce those same exact functions. Folder browse touches on the system Windows forms, folder browser dialog, and then this one opens the file dialog. And you have to use Windows form. You have to call in the assembly for Windows forms in order to be able to use that, or Windows message box, show message box. And then also you got check username, check password, check confirm. Right, and a lot of these are similar, and I could probably get one method to handle all of them and use a switch so that it knows which properties to change. But part of getting things off the ground is to produce a bunch of things and then start scaling back. Once you have something that works, then you can scale things back and then be able to determine where you can save a number of codes, a number of lines or code or whatever. And then toggle credential create. That's gonna look to see if it's a Microsoft account that it's trying to produce. If it isn't, then it's only gonna check those 3 fields. If it is, then it's gonna check those 4 fields. And toggle template create. If the template is in, it's gonna check the flags. It's basically like having a bunch of doodads, algorithms, and things in place that check their neighbor to see if he's home, and if the neighbor's home, then the neighbor gets to call the neighbor's wife, and the neighbor's wife's going to say, he's going to ask the wife, hey, are we going to go to that party this weekend? And then the neighbor's wife's going to be like, well, I need to go buy a bunch of potatoes to make the potato salad because they wanted us to bring the potato salad, and if I don't bring the potato salad, then we're not going to win the award for the best potato salad on the block. So then you need to have the wife contact the grocery store to make sure that they have the right potatoes in stock, because she's not going to win the award if she doesn't get the right potatoes. And then once she finds out that yeah, we do have the right potatoes, and then the wife will be like, oh, all right, yeah, they do have the right potatoes, so we should be good. We should be able to like show up at like 3 o'clock on Friday, you know, and like, you know, win the award. And then you know, someone else will be like, well, we'll wait to see when that happens. And so they have to wait for, you know, 3 o'clock to roll around, which is execution time. You're not going to have any way to check the path if they haven't shown up with that awesome, amazing potato salad, right? So I'm sprinkling in metaphors in what I'm explaining. I'm explaining a really complicated process. I'm trying to make it like intuitive to look at. You know, it's not going to be intuitive to look at for some people, but for some people it will be. You know, you want to check the net BIOS. You want to make sure that it's an actual legitimate net BIOS ID that you're entering in. You know, if the length of that string is less than 1 and it's longer than 15, nope, it's going to be an error. It's going to be an X. It's not going to work. Or if it's in reserved, then it's going to say it's in a reserved words list. And these are all things that are in the DC promo function that I made. And then also, let's see, the master net BIOS. And then if the X equals that, then it's going to say number 1, and it's going to show the success symbol. And then if it shows the success symbol, then it's going to allow that person to create that template from the GUI, right? And some of these things you're not going to be able to like do from the PowerShell console, because how would you? You have to type in the parameters, you have to set properties, and then you have to add methods that sort of do the same thing. So like, the idea here is that I'm not going to explain every single method, but they're all like pertinent to like the graphical user interface. In order to develop a graphical user interface that does something really advanced and complicated and doesn't cause problems, and if it does cause a problem, then it's going to report what problem happened and then prevent other problems from existing. It's a long set of criteria, and you know, in this entire process, my respect for a lot of the application developers out there has grown exponentially, because, you know, I didn't anticipate that I'd have to, you know, be this meticulous in order to, you know, compete with people that have their Microsoft MVP. Not that I'm trying to do that, but what I'm saying is, like, if I want to earn their respect after, like, you know, doing something that probably, you know, they got miffed when I used a bad word. And because I used a bad word, they're going to think I'm bad. So, that's the idea here. Is, you know, notwithstanding, maybe they'll sit around in a circle and you'd be like, you know what, that Michael Cook dude, he does use bad words. Does that make him a bad person? No, I don't know. You know, he is making an effort to kind of like be very meticulous and, you know, show all this stuff. Right? A lot of people that are going to look at some of this are going to be pretty confused. The guys at Microsoft that look at this, some of them might be confused at first, but when they look at it for a while and they start interacting with the variables and the console and everything, they'll understand it works and it makes sense. And those are the criteria that they look for before they hire people. You know, does it work? Does it not work? Alright, well, if someone has a resume and it looks good, but the code that they write doesn't work, how do you explain that? You know, I think that's pretty critical in a time where like ChatGPT exists and they can just ask ChatGPT to write code for them. You know, how do you know that they're not asking ChatGPT to do all this work with their like master's degree or whatever? And I'm not saying that like anyone specifically is doing that, but yeah, now they have to look for people that are doing that as a precaution to make sure that they're hiring people that aren't going to screw things up. And that's, you know, it makes things stressful on them. Somebody somewhere has to like look over like making sure that people aren't cheating. You know, that's the beginning and the end of it. And you know, here's the output that I was able to record in the video that I recorded while I made this document. I'm not going to release that video because it's 2 parts. It's a 6-hour video. It doesn't have any sound, and it's boring to watch. You know, there's no Microsoft deployment toolkit about it. It's far from done. You know, does Michael, my house, call NDT, the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, occasionally. Well, his name is Michael, and I think he is the guy that like came up with the idea for that. You know, after business desktop deployment and system center configuration manager, I don't think that he like sat around and was like, you know what, I'm happy with all the work that I did and I'm gonna retire. Nope, I'm pretty sure the dude still works at Microsoft every day. Well, maybe not every day, but often enough. Anyway, I was able to unpack and examine all aspects of the function New-VmController. Is it done? Nah. Is it perfect? Nah. Will it win a Nobel Peace Prize or anything like that? Probably not. I think, you know, if anyone deserves a Nobel Peace Prize, it's probably Bill Gates. You know, he still hasn't gotten one yet. And a lot of people seem to have it in for him. And I think he's done plenty enough to deserve one. You know. Are we ready for the next pandemic? You know, he asked people. He had a presentation on TED Talk where he's like, we're not ready for the next pandemic. And then what happened? We weren't ready for COVID-19. Why weren't we ready for it? Because, like, there's a lot of people that, you know, they have a position where they have a job to do, but sometimes all they do is they say that they do a job, and the job that they get paid to do is just like ignore the job that they get paid to do. And you know, I want to think like not everybody in the world does this, but a lot of them do. Anyway, with that being said, is there any last things I want to show off before I close this out? I don't know. Let's double check. Oh yeah. So CTRL. Why don't I cover this? CTRL module. You know, it's a property, but I showed off that is basically get iffy module, right? And let's do the same thing that I did before. You know, I covered this in the document that I wrote, that I just like explained. But now what I want to do is ctrl.xaml, right? This names gets all the names for all of the individual items in the XAML, the chunk of XAML, right? And like borders in there, but you know, that's basically a control template. And I want to say types, and then that expands the names into the properties. These are all properties. The control is basically a property that's in the XAML item, and all those names, they're basically searchable as XAML types where name match template, and that's going to grab all the ones that start with template because I used the regex term to like the start of the string, the template. But if I remove that, it's going to look for like if template is in the search string, and it is in node template. But you know, the caret indicates that it's got to be the start of the string. No screwing around. It's got to say template and then something else. And so in order to write the XAML, why don't I cover that actually? Open up Visual Studio Code, or Visual Studio, and cover how I developed. From the moment that I ended the video for, what was it, Red Hat Enterprise Linux deployment, I worked on this GUI here. I spent a lot of time like switching between like the XAML and Visual Studio Code with the PowerShell, because that is how I develop the code. I don't have to like compile the code. You know, I just run the PowerShell commands that I've been writing to sort of expedite the process of building what I'm building. And so a lot of the aspects of the GUI here, you know, I could add in more styling. I could get really into the nitty gritty of like storyboarding. I could add rounded corners. I could add like I don't know, a state change so that like when I click on a button, then like if it's I don't know, XAML is basically an integration of HTML and CSS, though there are some elements of like JavaScript with the storyboarding type stuff. And you know, I think that by demonstrating this whole entire function here and how it interacts with the GUI, I think I've demonstrated that I could very easily like make a website with like Razor and Blazor, right? I have made a website that does some of that stuff, and you know, shout out to Tim Corey for being a pretty cool dude. I have emailed him a few times about like some of my ideas, but ultimately I wanted to focus on like something that demonstrates that I can create an entire package, and I didn't want to have to like write a whole bunch of C# and then like implement like XAML and then slowly build things within C# and then compile it, and then once I had it compiled, then 5 minutes later, or depending, I don't know, it doesn't take 5 minutes to compile like a lot of C# code, but the thing is like you don't get a chance to rerun the code. With PowerShell, that's pretty easy. You can rerun the code, you don't have to compile it. And now that I have this all complete, I can take elements of this PowerShell code and then start writing the C# code. So if I want to make it snappier or faster, I can easily do that. Though, I don't write with C# nearly often enough to be able to do that like in a single day or like a single week. Right, the Visual Studio is great for writing C# if you're writing C#, because then it gives you code highlighting or syntax highlighting, and that's important to be able to know where like you have an error. Right, see, I have some errors showing up. Oh, this is FVDC found cannot be found, and I think that I have like I don't know where the heck it's getting that information from. And I'm not gonna spend like hours trying to research why that's showing up. If I look at this file, right, and I don't see any direct references to those files, I'm just gonna move on. But I'm sure that by talking with somebody that knows where that information would be, or whatever, then they'd be able to say, oh yeah, it's in this other file, or one of these variables that C# is calling on with this XML file. Pretty sure this is an XML file, then and I'd be able to continue moving forward with what I'm doing. But I don't really like the way that this stretches all the way out to infinity and beyond. I am exaggerating that, but I don't know. There's got to be a simpler way to do all this. There's like the reason why like I like the idea of breaking the code down like that is because then I can fit it into the word editor. You know, I think this is very important for comprehension, to be able to make things that are short and concise, and they don't span across the screen like 110,000 characters, like Kevin Henney says. You know, stick to like 80 characters across. And I think I mentioned this before, I think 80 characters is pretty limiting. And, you know, I could, like, change the size of this so this, like, 6. And then it would fit. But, you know, once you make the size of the font smaller, then it's going to cause someone that needs to wear glasses in order to read it to start squinting and be like, what the heck? Why does this dude use font that's so friggin' small I can't read it? You know, I don't want people to, I'm being considerate of those types of people. You know, they gotta wear contacts to be able to read some of this stuff. They don't want to have to, like, grab a magnifying glass too. You know, because that's two different lenses that they gotta look through in order to understand the code that I wrote. And, you know, sometimes people would be like, you know what? I grabbed the magnifying glass to be able to see this code that he wrote, and it sucks. You know, oh well. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about specifically is, like, these tabs here. If I compare the tabs with the code in this, hold on, let me move that over there, and then split it this way, and then drag this down, and that. You know, one lone coder uses Visual Studio quite often to write C++, and you know, C++ and C# sort of have a lot in common, and they got similar syntax and everything, and PowerShell borrows a lot from C#. It's not the same though, it is very different. You can call in commands from PowerShell and then interact with the XAML. I think that's pretty cool. And that's something that I like learned how to do from like watching guys like Tobias Weltner and Michael Willis. What's his name? I think it's Michael Willis. I'm pretty sure it's Michael Willis. He wrote like a document about PowerShell v5 classes, and he's got a picture of like someone from Highlander like experiencing a quickening, which I grew up on that show and I thought that was pretty cool. You know. Anyway, staying back on the subject here, if I go to CTRL, right? So master, credential, image, template, node, right? Master, credential, image, template, node. So like as I'm developing the GUI, I realize, okay, well, if I have the button here, and then like I have this other button here, and like I want the flow of the document to, or the application to be a certain level of efficiency. And what I want to do is I want to prevent somebody from having to like click on this tab and then go to that tab and then like click on this and then hit browse and then import, and then it's like, wait a minute, okay, so I could do that here and then implement it so that it affects some other class here, and I want all these classes to be like individuals so that I can debug any potential problems. And then oh, well, I had this cool idea where I wanted to click on new, and then if I clicked on new, it would clear all the fields, and then I'd be able to change the account credential type. And that's an idea that I had after like making the RHEL demonstration. Was like, alright, I need to make it so that there's a way for me to add other credential types, and then like have it go along with the template, and it's got to be secure. Can't like be showing people passwords for stuff. So like if someone has direct access to the physical machine, they're gonna have access to the passwords. There's no way around that. Otherwise, you have to like implement a way to transmit the credential over the internet with a a hash key token with a digital signature from hell, and it's got to be able to collect 100 rings after collecting 7 chaos emeralds, and then supersonic goes jumping around like a friggin' nutcase all over the place, and that's pretty complicated. You got to keep some things simple is what I'm getting at. All this explanation is meant to make what I'm saying comical in order to make this demonstration like entertaining. Who's gonna want to watch a video of me like talking about this for like 3 hours? Well, I'll tell you, people that like want things to work, that spend a lot of time like stressing out about potential problems ahead of time. Anyway, control master, it brings back all that. The variables aren't set, but I could easily set them. Then control credential. Actually, hold on a second. So there's all the methods for the master. There's all the methods for the credential object. There's all the methods for the control object. Right. And then image. There's all the methods for the image object. There's all the methods for the template object. And then node. Basically the control object to instantiate new virtual machine objects. And flag is basically meant for validating anything in the GUI. Right, so I think that's going to do it for this demonstration. And here, why don't I go back to I'll close that. I was making. This is the last video that I made featuring Windows 11. So it was on April 30th. Though I think that this particular video didn't go into the links that I did in this particular video. The error that was on the screen in the very beginning of the video was the same error that popped up on in this video, and then I had to end the video because I didn't have enough time, nor did I have a lot of things in place to continue the demonstration from that point. And this document exists. It's at this link here on my GitHub. Do I think that someone's going to read every document that I've ever wrote? No, probably not. But if I say PowerShell Virtualization Lab objective, perform a demonstration of the functions New-VmController and initialize VM node. Though I don't have, I didn't put the script for Windows 11. Which is basically an updated version of that. This is just the function, and I didn't include the script because it wasn't done. Helpful tips: don't be lame or anything like that, because that's dumb. Be cool, or at least try to remain level-headed if you get aggravated by people that do dumb stuff, and that can happen quite often. Make sure you leave at least 15 to 20% tip for your waiters and waitresses if you eat out at restaurants. Don't leave 0 to 5% tip, because they work hard to earn tips. It is incredibly rude not to tip waiters or waitresses if you eat out, because if you can't afford to tip, then you really shouldn't be eating out. Don't call the kettle black if you're a teapot, because that is extremely offensive and hypocritical and dumb. Though that is a bit of an opinion. Those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it, so make sure you use PowerShell in order to save properties and variables. You don't have to do the last part, but just be mindful of things that happened before in history. They may happen again, and that's sort of the reason why I began to be a programmer. Use char 175 align PowerShell scripts for the upper score character. Some people are going to get mad about that specific thing. Be like, don't use that character. He's being a wise ass. Don't do it. Basically, insert PowerShell ISE. If you use that character and then you open the script after downloading it from the internet or whatever through a certain command that doesn't use basic parsing or whatever, then it's going to have stupid extra character all over the place. It's I think it's like a capital A with a couple dots over it. In fact, why don't I figure out which thing that is? 32 to 255. I think it's, where is it? It's a cap. There it is. This one right there. You'll get this. If you use that in PowerShell, you get that. Instead of a line of those, instead of a line like that, you'll get a line that looks like that. And that is why some people would be like, don't use the upper score character, don't use char 175. And then pay respects to people like Paul Allen, who is deceased. He died at or about the time that I started my company, Securities Plus. And then Bill Gates, he is OG programmer / visionary, and he is the guy that went on a TED Talk and said, the next pandemic, ... we're not ready. And then a bunch of people clapped, and then a bunch of people just kind of ignored what he had to say. And then the next pandemic came, and it killed a lot of people, and we're still reeling from that too. Though, I think that the idea behind COVID-19 is rather elusive.
I think that it was like some sort of biological warfare, though I'm not going to explain to that what I think about that to the umpteenth degree. I just know that it came from the Wuhan province in China, and China is very good at denying accountability, but they're not alone. Then there's also Steve Jobs, who has since passed. R.I.P. Steve Jobs. Steve Wozniak, he's still alive. He commonly shows up and introduces some of his respectable opinions about things in the industry, especially the company that he helped start. And Gary Kildall founded Digital Research and created CPM, which was a lot like DOS, or gave DOS some... I'm not going to get into the history because I wasn't alive when that whole era occurred, but CPM was basically like the predecessor for DOS. And then Linus Torvalds, he wrote the first instance of Linux, which was based on Unix, I believe. And then Tim Berners-Lee conceptualized the internet, or the World Wide Web, or both. Well, maybe much less the internet and more the World Wide Web. And then Jeff Bezos, he's a visionary that started Amazon, and a lot of people buy stuff using Amazon. And then Mark Zuckerberg is a business magnate. He founded Facebook, and he made damn certain that AOL Instant Messenger is deleted from, not deleted, but a lot of people don't use it anymore. They just use Facebook Messenger. And then also Elon Musk, who's basically Cyber Commando 5000. He might actually be like the real life version of Bruce Wayne, or as they say in Iron Man 2, like the real life Tony Stark. His achievements are too many to list. He will never accept any level of success. He will always conceptualize new ideas as long as he lives. It's pretty obvious to see that nothing can stop that guy. And he has a lot of influence over. Whenever he talks, people listen. Basically, what I'm getting at. And there's plenty of other honorable mentions, but they made it possible for people to complain about stuff over the internet. And that's it for the helpful tips. Press any key to continue, or just keep reading. And then here's the link to the document. Anyway, if you liked what you saw, feel free to like, comment, or subscribe, and thanks for watching.